YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and I am back in Total War Warhammer 2. Sorry I had to miss another day yesterday on videos. I had actually intended to get something up, but once again, just kind of got busy at work. But I've got you covered today. Also, there will be streams this week on Wednesday and Thursday, both at 8 p.m. U.S. Central. Some of you may be wondering, Air, have you seen these teaser trailers that Total War are putting out? I have. What do you think they are? I mean, I think I've told people on another stream that it's only one of two things. It's either another DLC for Warhammer 2, or they're obviously potentially teasing an upcoming announcement about Warhammer 3. We all know Warhammer 3 is coming at some point. They just haven't officially announced it, and this could be leading up to that. I don't know what it is, but I don't make the speculation videos. I know some of you enjoy that, and some people enjoy making them, but yeah, I'm not really into it, so that's why I haven't made any. And as soon as we have some actual news, I'll talk about the actual news. But until then, we get these tease videos. All right, let's keep things going here. This is going to be an Empire versus Dwarves matchup. This was sent to me by Consul of Rome. And this is always an interesting matchup between these two factions, because both of them, in some ways, can kind of make life a bit of a nightmare for each other. The Empire can't cut through armor with infantry very well, though they do have one option in the Great Swords. The Empire has all kinds of ranged and other stuff that makes life a nightmare for the Dwarves, and it's just kind of an interesting trade-off. Now, this particular map gave these rocket batteries a very, very good position here, and this, honestly, is a really big problem for the Dwarves. These batteries being on this hillside are going to be very well protected against Dwarf artillery. And you can see that the Sunmaker and the other Hellstorm rocket battery are just absolutely raining death all over the Dwarves. The rest of the Empire army here, just a few spears. They'll hold up a formation. There's a couple Empire Knights working the field. You can see one of them already taking some shots here. A couple of handguns. We do have a Amber Wizard who's already summoning a Manticore, which I think that's a great call against the Dwarves. It just gives them one extra thing they have to keep track of, and it's a mess. There were the Pistoliers coming in, but they strayed too close, and the Ekron Miners are going to blast them to an oblivion. Don't underestimate those Ekron Miners. There are some units back here, Warriors with great weapons, who are armored, but they have no shield. And obviously, though, the target there was the cannons for the Pistoliers. They're having a little trouble getting to them. There are some Quarrelers here for the Dwarves. A lot of the Dwarf infantry already taken a pretty good shellacking. We had some Warriors with Dragonfire Pass, Miners with blasting charges, and then they're all led by a Rune Lord. See the rockets continuing to fire in, with their objective being the Thunderers and the Quarrelers, and those are good targets. Over here, some Demigryph Knights, the non-halberd variant, which is a good call against Dwarves, are working on trying to kill some Quarrelers. They are protected by some Warriors with great weapons. Demigryph Knights won't want to get tangled up there over the long run. The Warriors with great weapons have some pretty good leadership. It can certainly last a while in that fight. We do have the Deathjacks here, which is a Regiment of Renown Archer that stalk and I believe the snipe ability as well. Yeah, stalk and snipe, so if they're hidden, they'll remain hidden while firing. Not a particularly powerful unit per se, but just another thing to make life a little bit miserable for the Dwarves. And you can see that as far as misery goes, the Dwarves love that company apparently, because the rocket batteries are making their life utterly miserable right now. And the Rune Lord is kind of a big target on this anvil. That's actually part of the reason why I typically don't bring the anvil for the Rune Lord, is it just makes him too easy to shoot, and that's exactly what's happening here. The handguns in the background are really feeding it to the Rune Lord. Though the handguns are taking a few cannon shots, it's just that the cannons won't be as nearly as effective against the handguns as the rockets will be against the Dwarf infantry. It is not a two-way street. The Pistoliers continue to harass the artillery, and they are also being harassed by the Ekron Miners, and kudos to the Dwarf player here. I think there's a lot of pressure being kept off of the cannons, but only so much they can do. This one's taken some pretty serious damage. There are some Bugman's Rangers coming back for some more fight, and of course they will heal up until they hit the cap for how many entities that they have left. Bugman's Rangers are pretty tough in that regard. We can see these Deathjacks getting some shots on the unshielded Dwarf Warriors. Again, they're not an AP unit, but when you don't have a shield, you're going to feel it when you're just taking archer fire or any kind of missile fire. See here, the Rune Lord actually gets routed. The cannons continue to fire. There was a great sword unit from the Empire kept in reserve, and I like this play. Hold it back, Wait for late in the game when the dwarves have a whole lot less to stop it. Don't get it, you know, beaten up early by a bunch of different magic. This was a good call. This was a good call. And now this greatsword is going to be a very deadly force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. So like these slayers and other units are not going to want to fight it. It's going to be a difficult unit for the dwarves to deal with. The Demigryph Knights were initially routed because they did get stuck in that fight with the warriors with great weapons for too long. They've come back now trying to run another charge. You can see that they're still kind of lazily caught in this fight, and they haven't been used to any great effect. So the dwarf player has managed to keep them contained. The Quarrelers here and the Bugman's Rangers here. This one under fire, the Bugman's fleeing back. You can see that the Bugman's that had regrouped back here is, again, continuing to heal here, and given time, it's going to pick up a bunch of hit points. So the Empire is going to struggle to deal with this unit. Don't underestimate the Bugman's Rangers. They're pretty potent in the right scenarios just because of the way they can heal up. They have that liquid fortification trait, and they can heal up quite a bit. See some Thunderers here putting some shots on the Spearmen with shields. That Spearman doesn't have a prayer of cutting through those Bugmans, though they may keep them busy for a moment. The General of the Empire just finished off those Warriors who are under fire from the Deathjacks. Now, I would assume the Deathjacks are going to help out against these miners with blasting charges, as did the handguns. Handguns with ammunition, this late in the game, are probably a death sentence for the dwarves. Now, the artillery for the Empire is essentially out of ammunition. The dwarves still have a couple of artillery pieces. This one's actually still firing all 3 guns. That is more than I would have thought at that point. So, got all 3 guns firing on both artillery units, so that could be a problem for the Empire, but there are still some mobile units whipping around here, like this Pistoliers, and there's starting to be fewer dwarf units to chase them. I about half wonder if the dwarves shouldn't just go ahead and take those units and position them right on top of the artillery at this point, just because that artillery is really the only prayer for the dwarves here. It has to help destroy the handguns. But honestly, the handguns might be able to close the distance and open fire before the artillery could take its entire toll. It's certainly a possibility. So we'll see what happens there. But like I said, that could be a tough situation for the dwarves to handle, and it's not looking great for the dwarves at this point. The Rune Lord is pretty beat up. The dwarves did not recall their infantry to protect the artillery in time, and I think if this artillery goes down, the dwarf hope goes down with it, because I don't see what else they're going to do. They just don't have the infantry left. An Ekrund Miner is not going to be enough to stop all this, and this Rune Lord beat to crap again. It's not going to be enough to stop these 2 Empire heroes. As weak as those heroes are in melee, it's just not going to happen. These Bugman's Rangers do have a fair bit of ammunition, and that could potentially be dangerous. This other Bugman Ranger does not have any ammo, and again, the handguns now only under pressure by 1 cannon. The cannon's targeting the greatswords. Not a bad target. This is a dangerous unit for the dwarves to deal with, because they still do have this warrior with great weapons. They got an Ekrund Miner in decent shape, so the dwarves may be hoping that some of their infantry can carry the day if they're able to deal with some of these key units. Look at this, the handgun's just too far away for the Bugman's Rangers to do any ton of damage here, and plus the handguns are in range of those Rangers, but instead they're going to target the warriors, and this is a great idea, because you still got these cavalry back here, and look, the other artillery piece is now in its sights, and the dwarf hope drops even lower here. This will no doubt go in the Book of Grudges. The Empire Grudge will be something that the dwarves long remember. Personally, and I don't know that it always works out favorable, but personally, I love bringing some gyrocopters against the Empire. Part of the reason I like to do that is because typically what will happen when you pick the dwarves and you come into a matchup against the, say, a faction like the Empire is those players typically bring some mobility, right? Like, they'll have some cavalry, even light cavalry, because the dwarves lack a lot of mobility. If the dwarves completely lack mobility and you completely sacrifice that to the Empire up front, it can be rough. I think, as you saw here, like, there's nothing the dwarves could do. Like, whereas I feel like gyrocopters, they do have to be careful, obviously, of these handgunners. They have to be careful of a cannon and other things the Empire can bring. So it's not like the Empire doesn't have answer to gyrocopters. I just like the gyrocopters as an added bit of mobility. it makes it to where if you're the dwarf player, you're not the only player who's on their heels the entire time trying to defeat mobile units. You know what I mean? As the dwarf player, if you don't bring anything like that, you will spend the entire match fending off all these mobility units rather than actually being able to make your opponent fend them off. You see these Bugman's Rangers. These guys will probably own the Death Jacks in Melee. At least I would think so. But yeah, here we go. See here, again, the Dwarf Cannon had the potential to be dangerous here. It's causing some big damage. But when the extra one got hit early, I think it cost him big time. Because if those cannons would have been left long enough, and that Dwarf Warrior hadn't charged up here and gotten shot all up by these handgunners. So I love what the cannon did. Killed the Great Swords, and then the next target should have been this handgunner with ammo. If they did that, and that Warrior and the other units were held back here, then the Empire has to charge across here, taking damage from the cannons all the way. They have to cut through a Warrior with great weapons, which is honestly a pretty stubborn unit at this point in the game. A pretty stubborn unit indeed. And I think the Dwarves may have actually been able to pull this off, had that been the case. So again, earlier I think they should have just pulled back what infantry units they had, placed them directly on top of the cannon, and basically don't let anybody touch the cannons. Let them keep shooting. Just let them keep shooting. So anyway, a close fight nevertheless here to the end. What do you all think about the Empire-Dwarf matchup? To me, I mean, some people may say, oh, well, it favors the Empire, or it favors the Dwarves, or like so there may be some competitive players who think, all skill being equal, one of those factions is better than the other. And I'd be curious to see, for those who hold that opinion, if they hold it. For me personally, I feel like both these factions can give each other a bad day, depending on how the army picks go. And a lot of that, you know, may depend on the player, their knowledge of their opponent, what they think they'll pick, the map choice. All these kind of things can play in. And personally, though, like I said, I like having a little bit of mobility with the Dwarves, so I will fairly frequently bring gyrocopters to bear so that I can fly around the battlefield and harass the enemy as much as they want to harass me. It gives me the mobility. If they leave something unchecked in the background, then the gyrocopter will get it. You know what I mean? And so it gives them something to worry about. They have to consider it. They can't just write off, you know, your ability to get to the back of the map and get to their units. The other thing that can be pretty useful is if you are able to get, you know, a ranger hidden, or a Bugman's Ranger hidden, or a miner hidden really good. You know what I mean? Like, if you get one of those units hidden really good and wait for the right moment, when your enemy has decided, oh, you know, hey, my opponent can't get back to me over here, they can't do anything here, wait for their cavalry to be spent, or something like that, to, again, gives you another opportunity to potentially drop a bomb on them later in a fight that they're not expecting. But of course, it comes with some care, because if you do deploy one of those units and they're seen too early in the fight, the Empire would obviously be able to make short work of them, especially when they have a unit on the battlefield like any of these cavalry. So they would be able to make fairly short work of you. But like I said, that's another possibility too, is to keep something hidden for the right moment. Another thing I like to see the Dwarves do when they're going to fight the Empire like that, and it gets a little risky because you have to account for like cavalry. I like to see the Dwarves spread out really wide, spread out all over the battlefield. They have stubborn, well-armored units, and I think that will keep the Dwarves in pretty safe shape. And then when they spread out like that, it makes it very difficult for these artillery pieces to be as effective, right? There's no two units very close to each other, and I still think that the Goblobber is an absolutely critical unit. In an artillery fight, the Goblobber is absolutely brutal. I think when you combine it with cannons, it becomes very effective, because the Goblobber drops the leadership and can pretty quickly silence one of these artillery units if it's able to get shots at it. So anyway, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on this matchup. I'd love to see what you all think about it. Please get down in the comments and leave your thoughts as well. Do appreciate you all watching today. Hey, if you all want to know a great way to support the channel, because sometimes people ask me, you know, like, Air, what is the best way to support the channel? Should I watch the ads and other stuff like that? I mean, obviously, if you watch an ad, it's going to support the channel. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hey, sit around and watch all the ads on my channel. Here's what I'll tell you. If you watched this video and you liked it, interact with it. Leave a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike. Tell me why you disliked it. That'll help me know that I need to do better, right? Especially if you go leave me some comments. But it actually helps because interactions with the video is the way that the algorithm works. When people watch a video but don't interact with it, it gets less exposure. So interact with the video. That's the biggest thing that I can ask of you at any given time if you want to help support the channel, is just interact with the video, right? It's free. It doesn't cost you anything except for a few moments of your time, and it helps me a ton, so I appreciate it as always. Thank you for being here. You all are fantastic. I love making these videos for you. Keep an eye out for those streams like I mentioned. I will get those scheduled. HeirofCarthage signing out for now.